Like father, not like son. In a shocking turn of events last night, Ron Paul's son, Rand Paul, came out on the Hannity show on Fox News to make a special announcement. His endorsement.
My first choice had always been my father. I campaigned for him when I was 11 years old. He's still my first pick. But, you know, now that the nominating process is over, tonight I'm happy to announce that I'm going to be supporting Governor Romney.
His endorsement for presidential candidate Mitt Romney. Well, it was a blow for Ron Paul's supporters who are still rallying for Ron Paul into the very end of the game. So what does this endorsement mean? And should we expect Ron Paul's endorsement for Mitt next? To join me now to discuss more is Lew Rockwell, chairman with the Ludwig von Mises Institute. So, Lew, what's your opinion on this shocking endorsement, to say the least, and on Fox News to boot?
Well, it's too bad it was on Hannity, who, of course, after all, is an enemy of Ron Paul. But I think it's not a surprising announcement at all. Rand has always made it clear that he's not a libertarian. He's a Republican conservative. I think it was always very much in the cards that he would endorse the nominee. In fact, he's been saying that for some time. So I don't think that's a surprise, but I think it's a sideshow. I think what we have to think about is, first of all, congratulating Ron Paul on all he's done, on the millions of kids he's brought into the liberty movement, not only in this country, but in foreign countries, who he's educated about Austrian economics and issues of war and peace and the police state and so forth. And that all goes on, and I would say intensifies once the political stuff is out of the way, because I must say, I think you can't actually change the regime from the inside any more than you can change the mafia from the inside. So it has to be done from the outside. Now Ron Paul is going to be working, as he always has his whole life, from the outside in an educational way, not in a political way. And I think we're going to see many more victories from Ron and from the Paul movement. It's just not going to be part of the political baloney that goes on in Washington.
Lew, I know you're saying it's not really a surprise, but a lot of people on the blogosphere are very shocked and are saying, you know, he's a sellout. I wanted to play you a clip really quickly of him talking about how we should audit Goldman Sachs, if we could roll that really quickly. This was before he joined the Senate.
People who get together, who are very wealthy people, who I think manipulate and use government to their own personal advantage. And I think that's the biggest thing that would help us combat this, is that they want to make it out like they're just to help humanity and world government will be good for humanity. But guess what? World government's good for their pocketbook. Most of the people through an audit, maybe like Goldman Sachs and different banks that are making a lot of money off the U.S. taxpayer through these special deals they're getting with the Federal Reserve.
So there he is, pre-Senate, talking about how we should audit Goldman Sachs, also kind of criticizing the Bilderberg group there. And there's kind of speculation that Romney was at Bilderberg. And here you see, you know, Goldman Sachs is the top donor of Romney's campaign. I mean, this is kind of a 180 in his rhetoric.
Well, Romney represents, just as Obama does, represents the oligarchy. The Republican Party is run by an oligarchy. It's why it can't be taken over by the people. Same with the Democratic Party. The plutocrats run everything. And as to auditing Goldman Sachs, my emphasis would be let's take their tax money away. Let's take their special loans from the Federal Reserve, take all their privileges away, and let them be in the market, and let's see what happens to them. I'm not for auditing them, and the government doesn't do a good job of auditing anything, after all. They can't audit it. You know, accounting and government are not two words that go together.
So let's take this in the bigger picture, Lew. You know, you're saying that it kind of always has been about the idea and not really about one person. But once again, I mean, there is a massive disappointment right now from Ron Paul supporters saying, you know, what happened? I mean, we're still with Ron Paul to the very end. I see people saying that we're still going to vote for him, but then you see Ron Paul kind of coming out and saying, you know, we don't have enough delegates, it's kind of over. What do you think is going to happen with the Liberty Movement if his own son kind of sells him out and endorses their rival here?
Well, I think, you know, Rand realizes that the Ron Paul campaign is over. It's been over for some time. In fact, as Ron recently pointed out, he can probably count on 200 delegates. That's out of, you know, what, 2,400 delegates. So, you know, of course he has no chance to win this nomination. He fought a great fight. He fought a very hard fight. He touched, as I say, millions of hearts and minds. Most of them didn't want to vote, however. But now the voting, you know, for Ron is over, and it's going to be other things besides voting. Some people will still write him in, but some people still have had the view, which, you know, I guess is charming but slightly unpersuasive, that this is all a secret strategy to surprise the Romneyites and win the nomination, and they're not fully in reality. So the Ron Paul campaign, Ron Paul's effort in politics, as magnificent as it has been for decades, and all the great things that he's done, although I would always argue educationally rather than ever changing politics itself, which is, I would say, a mug's game. But he's used his political status as a soapbox to teach the world. One of the great things is one of the why he's, such a great man, the greatest man of our time maybe, will be looked back on that as just an extraordinary human being. But I don't, that's the way he used politics. He was never a guy who, scratch your back, you scratch mine, I'll vote for your bill, you vote for mine, you vote for my corruption, I'll vote for your corruption. He never played those games, ever. So he's never really been part of politics as we think of it normally. He always has been outside of politics. Now he's going to be completely outside of politics, and he still is dedicated to all the same ideas. He's laid much more groundwork with all the great college speeches and other speeches he's given. And now's the time to plant the seeds and grow the crop. And he's going to continue to do that. He is not through with this fight.
Lou, I think people are looking at this whole thing and just kind of hoping that Rand Paul would pick up where Ron Paul kind of left off. I mean, he is pretty strong in the civil liberties front, although he never really emulated his dad with foreign policy and the anti-interventionism stance. But I mean, you're looking at the entire GOP establishment. You as a libertarian know this better than most, that they've shut out Ron Paul for so long, didn't even allow him at the debates in 2008. I mean, so why cater to an establishment party that shut out what your morals are this whole time?
Well, I'm not for catering to these. It's a disgusting bunch. After all, they're for torture, they're for concentration camps, they're for war, they're for drones in your backyard. Go down the list of all the horrible things the federal government is doing. They're all for them. So I'm not for catering. I'm for just forgetting it.
Do you think that he's catering to get the VP?
Tampa, I wouldn't go.
Do you think that he's catering to get the VP nomination here?
Well, who knows? I mean, Rand is probably a possibility for the vice presidency or more, if not this time, the next time. But he's a different person from his dad. He's not a copy of his dad. He has his own views, his own career. He's been very successful very successful, but he's just different. So I would say the people who expect him to be a genetic, clone of his dad, it's not true. And how could you expect that? They're different people. All I would say is, in my view, partisan politics, electoral politics, is really a corrupt game. It involves all kinds of corrupt bargains, and one shouldn't participate in it.
So do you think that this goes to show you that people should just not rely on politicians at all to do their bidding and just be voting every day with their actions?
Well, they shouldn't bother. First of all, they shouldn't bother to vote. It's a pain in the neck. Your vote doesn't count unless otherwise the election's a tie. And it buttresses the regime. So you shouldn't vote, you shouldn't be involved in partisan politics, but you should throw yourself into the struggle for liberty. You should educate yourself, help educate others, and get people to withdraw their consent from the government. The government has to be brought to task from the outside. It cannot happen from the inside. If you're in the inside, Ron Paul's an exception to this rule, but typically if you're in the inside of the government, you become almost instantaneously part of the problem.
And Lou, just a yes or no to wrap up this segment. Do you think that we can expect Ron Paul to come out with his endorsement next for Romney?
I don't think so. I don't think that Ron will be endorsing Romney.
Well, we know that he did endorse Chuck Baldwin in 2008, so it would be very fascinating to see what unfolds next.
He didn't endorse George W. Bush, nor did he vote for him either time.
Thanks so much for joining us, Lou.
Thank you.
Lew Rockwell, Chairman with the Ludwig von Mises Institute.